Good morning and welcome to our live stream. We had a little bit of technical issues last Thursday that prevented us from being able to stream. Unfortunately, Seiji is not with me this morning, so you get just myself, Ted Elsner, with the Sacramento Fry Factor. We might have one of my other instructors joining us as well today, but we're going to go through and we're going to do this. So, this week we have Thanksgiving coming. It's a time for remembrance, right? And this has especially got us thinking about some of the basics. We've been covering here in our live stream some of Meyer's various, more complex techniques, some of his secondary cuts, some of the stance and footwork that we did early on. But one thing that we haven't really talked about are just sheer fundamental issues, right? And that is really going to be things like guards, basic cuts, drilling, what can we do, what should we do, what's available for us to work with. So the first one that I want to look at as we go along with this today is let's talk about drills. Now everybody knows the four openings drill, the Meyer square as it's affectionately referred to as, but Meyer actually includes a lot of other drills that should really be considered as well. Most notably in the Dusac section, which a lot of people skip over. There are a great series of cutting drills that Meyer gives us that absolutely should be considered. Whether it's cutting all the way through or cutting, to long point, and he describes the reason for both of those things. Why we're going to cut through both to hit or to suppress, and also cutting to long point and practicing doing that so that as you're cutting in, if you notice that your opponent is making a change or they're attacking, you can immediately shift from offense to defense as needed. Something that, I think in the HEMA-verse we all really are bad at in a lot of situations, especially starting off. We get so focused on our attack that we don't give ourselves time to pause and switch over what we're going to do and actually respond to that offensive action that is coming our way. So look at the Dusac. Notably in the Dusac, one of my personal favorites is a drill that Meyer gives us, which is the third, or it's the drill with 6 cuts, and is really nice. Here, let me go ahead and pull that up for you here. There we go. Right, our drill with 6 cuts that I've got going on right here. Let me get myself in frame. Starting with a Zornhau from our right, followed by a Mittelhau, then 2 Unterhau, and then another Mittelhau, and then finally the last cut is either a Zornhau, which I've depicted here mostly out of space considerations, or even just an Oberhau. And it's a beautiful cutting pattern, notably because every single cut gives us a defensive strike immediately afterwards. If I start with my Zornhau, I immediately am flowing back into a Mittelhau. Now, the lines there are too low. They should be through the chin, but that way I cut through, Nachreißen attack happens, they're attacking the opening that I've just left, my upper right, so I'm immediately coming back with the Mittelhau to set aside their action. Similarly, the 2 Unterhau will work to counter each other because, again, setting aside. And then finally we have a Mittelhau, which is not a great opening attack, but certainly could provoke someone to attack you in time, followed by either an Oberhau to suppress into the ground or a Zornhau that is going to defeat that action as well. So I personally really love this drill right here. I think it's a great drill. I think that it's one that you should put together. We have a similar drill, and maybe we'll go to it when we switch over to the other camera, that we do here for our beginners that just strings together 4 of our cuts and embraces kind of that same mentality where we want every cut to immediately be followed by a counter cut. And I really like it. It has some interesting stuff that gives our beginners something to chew on. It's not something from Meyer, but it is one that we really enjoy. And so we'll kind of go through that today as well. Beyond that, though, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on discussion. With Thanksgiving coming, there's a lot of kind of different focus for a lot of people right now with the holidays. So myself, I'm dealing with that with my wife. Let's go ahead and let's jump over, and we're going to talk about guards, and then I'll probably go through that drill that I mentioned as well. All right, so here we are. Guards in Meyer. Now, hopefully my audio is working. If not, you'll let us know, and we'll go from there. But let's talk about guards. This is probably one of the most contentious issues, right, that we find in Kunstfechten, in the German KDF system. Early on, Lichtenauer, he definitely describes 4 guards and tells us that we should think of everything in 4 guards. He himself doesn't really fence from those, from Vomtog, from Oxflug and Alber especially, except he does. But early on, especially you talk to early KDF practitioners, there's this disdainful nature of guards, that you should never enter into a guard, that you should never hold one of these positions. Meyer, on the other hand, does give us, specific guards that he organizes his material with, that he really wants us to work from. And a lot of ink has been spilled by people trying to, get perfectly into the position that he gives us. And, is this something that we really, really want to do? Are the guards things that are set in stone, or are they really something that you should think of as a starting and ending point? Unsurprisingly, perhaps, I've definitely fallen on the side of these are starting points and ending points for all of Meyer's actions, and it really is kind of waypoints along the way where when you're trying to do a technique, if you find yourself in a position that's not one of Meyer's guards or postures, that can be a really interesting question, and maybe you need to kind of re-look at your technique and figure out, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something right? Now, here at the school, we break our positions down into three types of postures. The first are the Versetzung. Now, for longsword, there's really one that you're going to enter under, and that's going to be Gerade Versetzung. Grab a sword here. Gerade Versetzung, right, which is essentially a version of long point. Earlier traditions will refer to it as Spreckfenster. Meyer calls it his straight parry in the Gerade Versetzung. And it's a strong defensive position done from either foot forward stance, where essentially we're out in long point, except for we're not trying to finish an action, we're trying to defend. We're also going to turn our long edge towards our opponent's sword, wherever it may be, and this really can be accomplished, and something for a little trick here when you're trying to do this, when you're tracking someone's action. If they're to my left, I'm going to turn with my right hand, so that now my wrist is up and I'm in a nice, stable position here to protect with. Now, the problem that people run into a lot is that when it comes to the other side, they'll switch over in the process, putting a heavy brake in their wrists, and that's a problem. That's a problem structurally. So instead, if you need to defend to your right side, you're going to turn using the rear hand now, driving the action. And so this brings us into a position now where I'm nice and strong, I have a nice, stable wrist position, and it's frankly much faster when I act to control with the appropriate hand. So in that Gerade Versetzung, depending on which weapon we're looking at, sometimes he's much more straight. The Dusak seems like it's nearly up. Quarterstaff, of course, is right out there in front. We adopt for longsword this position where the point is just above our opponent's head, long edge is turned in, and again, controlling with both hands, right? So if I'm going to go to my left, I use my right hand. If I'm going to go to my right, I use my left hand, so that I have a nice, stable control either way when working with this. In Dusak, Meyer gives us Bogen, which is his hanging guard, and he'll definitely come out in that. Here at the school, we equate Hangentort to that. Now, Hangentort is a tricky issue, right? Meyer describes that in the image he gives us that the arms are a little too bent, they should be straighter. So, he kind of gives us his position here. Realistically, we're out like we're an ox, straight arms, still in the center though, right? I'm still going to be controlling the center. Either way, if I'm doing Gerade Versetzung, if I'm doing Hangentort, I'm trying to control that center line. And we know that Hangentort is dead center like that because at the end of the postures where he's talking about how you're going to move through them to perform cuts, he notes that you're going to go from a low guard. He says Eisenport, which leads us wondering, is it Eisenport or is it Schrankput, up through Hangentort and end in Einhorn. So we're going to pass through with Hangentort right in the middle of their chin. Both of those are our parrying positions. And they are parries. In the Dusak, Meyer notes that the Gerade Versetzung, the slice, they're the same thing, is the parry that comes from above, whereas Bogen, or in this case Hangentort, is going to be the parry from below. So we know that they're coming through the chin because we're also told that our defensive actions should always pass through our opponent's chin. Little features there. So those are our first type of positions, our strong parrying positions. Especially, we like to use those when facing a new opponent that we don't know, that we've never fought before. I'm not going to come out and give them a lot of targets, so I'm going to present Gerade Versetzung and see if they'll be dumb enough to run onto my sword. approach it nice and strong. After that, then we get into the positions that I typically think of as guards. These are guards because they control certain of our openings, they guard them from immediate attack, and they also are charged for a ready quick attack, right? So first one, kind of classically, is, thank you, is the Oberhut and Vomtag. Now, Meyer calls the position the same either way, going up above. Now, this one's always finicky, right? Some people go up and they're back here. That's probably not a great idea. When we start our action, the sword has to move up to start moving forward. Conversely, sometimes people try and hold it straight up in the air. There are depictions of this in earlier traditions. Forget exactly which manual it is. It's from right around 1470. Shows us a Vomtag that's right here in the front of it. Personally, I find that one to be, a little bit tiring if you're holding it out there in front of you. So our version, basically, when we think about this, is we want to be able to deliver a cut from above. We want it to start moving forward and down as soon as that cut acts, or well, forward and then down. And we don't want it too far back. I think of it as holding your sword like your baby, right? Because for a lot of us, this is our baby. We're going to toss it up in the air, but we want it to come right back down on us, right? So we're just going to go straight up, okay? You'll have right hand is going to be above left unless you're a southpaw. Nice and comfortable, ready to start that action with the close of the fingers and engage the core all the way through. It's also important when doing this that you are sending the sword up and not back. Alex, can you grab the Montante? Whether we're using a quarterstaff, whether we're using a larger sword, this is something that you have to be really, really careful about. Alex here is one of our other instructors. If I throw this backwards, right? If I go up and back, I'm going to feel that, right? Pulling over the back of my head with a larger weapon. I'm going to throw it back. I'm going to feel a lot of strain. On the other hand, if I go up, it's nice and easy, right? Gravity will do the stopping for me. And so if I want to be able to cut quickly back down, I can, versus if I go back and I need to come back forward, I have to use my muscles to stop what I'm doing. It's really hard, it's really tiring, and it's really, really bad. Can you check, Alex, make sure we're good? Just let me know if there's any questions. It'll be on the right side, right-hand side. There we go. All right, so that's kind of the thing that we're looking for here, is functional positions, right? So Grada Versetsum, straight in front of us. Vomtag is essentially the Grada Versetsum, straight up, right? And even to the point where there are manuals that note that sometimes Vomtag is described as Longwort. It's just Longwort. And it is. It's Longwort, and I rotate just at my shoulders, straight up, okay? And so we're there. Same rules apply. Next we have Ox. Ox sees, again, a lot of debate, a lot of discussion about this. Should we be long edge up? Should we be flat? Should we be short edge? Should we be back? Should we be forward? For myself, the answer to that question is yes but no, or it depends on context. A lot of times, long edge up absolutely makes sense. There are times where we will find a flat or even short edge coming in. What's most important is that we're threatening a thrust at our opponent from above. Nice straight arm so that if we are going to receive a parry, we're not trying to catch it with muscles that are going to lose. Skeletal structure is always going to do better there. And we're threatening the eye that's on the same side, right? So if I'm in right ox, I'm going to threaten a thrust at my opponent's left eye. What I don't want to do is cross over and threaten their right eye. If I'm here, an extension forward is going to bring it straight into line. If I'm crossed, extending forward makes me pull the point back, gives me a real weak mechanical structure, and leads to really being easily set aside. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to threaten my thrust at the opponent's eye, now their right eye. Okay? So either way, nice strong structure, able to receive a blow if we were to use it to defend, okay? And threatening the appropriate eye, not crossing the line. Which leads us to Flug. Same thing. Flug, we want to threaten that thrust from the side so that when we extend forward, it comes to the middle. If I'm crossed, I feel like I'm safe, right? I've got this sword in front of me. Look at me, I'm protected. Except I'm not. It's very easy to strike in behind the sword from the side targeting my arm, especially if I'm in a more forward style flug, like a lot of people will do for Meyer, it gives me a false sense of security. Yeah, I can still be struck here, but I'm aware that I'm open versus thinking I'm safe. If I want to be protected here in the middle, that's what Eisenport is for, right? And then it's kind of a low Graderversetzung. So I could do that if I want. And same thing, either side. Now, the question of where exactly should I be? Should I be short edge? Should I be long edge? I think there absolutely is an argument, especially on this side, for the short edge version, so that we're hiding behind, we're protected, we're trying not to get struck, versus here, especially if I've got my thumb gripping normal, I'm going to take a strike right on it. Either way, I'm putting my thumb up on the blade, tucked out of the way on the side, so that it's hidden and safe. Over here, slightly less of an issue, right? Although there are even some depictions that show the thumb on the outside indicating a short edge being used. I could certainly see that, maybe the strike comes in and it just misses your hand. Mileage may vary. Finally, Alber, down in front. We've cut from above to below. We're in our core. We're presenting an opening. We're still in a fairly strong space. We can take an Ausnehmen from here. We can do short edge strikes from there. But definitely Meyer doesn't give us a lot of plays, any plays, that are really starting from down here. But again, nice, comfortable end of the strike. Main thing, we're not pulling it well back in, right? We haven't cut and pulled back in. We've cut through and stopped. So that takes us through the guards, and there are 4 of them. And then everything else, all the rest of the postures are really just some variation on those guards. And again, they're beginning and ending points for actions. Some positions show up that are not explicitly given to us, but we can kind of deduce because they occur. Like the classic shoulder Vommtag. We actually here at the school usually refer to the high Vommtag as Oberhut and on the shoulder as Vommtag. Comes from Zornhut, right? If I'm here in Zornhut, threatening my point, ready to slip, ready to thrust, right, not back here, bring my hands down and shift forward, I'm going to be in a shoulder Vommtag position. Does Meyer explicitly give it to us? No. Does it exist within his work? Yeah. Now, this position is interesting. If we are using it as a guard, especially like we will think in later systems, I definitely, if I'm going to hang out here, I want it further to the side. I want to put my arm behind my sword. But if I'm passing through it, it's slightly less problematic because I'm not staying here. I'm going to be projecting force forward in just a minute. But if you walk out and you're going to fence from here, be prepared to get hit in that right arm. If you want to do that at that point, tuck it in tighter, hide that right arm, put a sword in front of it, take away the target. Okay? So we have Zornhut, gives us Vommtag. We have other ones as well. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of them today, but we'll see. We might get through all of them. What else? Let's go with one of my personal favorites, Schlussel. Okay? That's going to come in and threaten a thrust here in the middle. Great for stealing distance, moving in on a person. Question sometimes shows up, should I put my cross inside my arm or should it be outside of my arm? On a longsword, I find it doesn't really matter, especially one with a relatively small cross like this. On the other hand, if we go back to the Montante, if I try and tuck in now, I'm much more likely to catch myself, and suddenly having the cross out is a lot more natural as it goes. On the other side, it'll definitely be to the outside. If you've ever done any work with a pike, Schlussel is a very natural position for someone that's worked with a pike previously because it's how you're going to charge your weapon for an attack. You're going to be hanging out here ready to thrust forward with the action as it goes. Okay. Schlussel also I love for a very simple reason, right? So I'm in Schlussel, right, ready to go, and then someone approaches me from the behind. Okay, cool. Now I've got Mittelhut, right? Mittelhut is going to just be kind of our opposite of Schlussel. If I'm in Mittelhut, then I'm in Schlussel. And you'll find a lot of the guards have this kind of duality where you can change direction and you'll find yourself going from one to the other. All right, so I'm in Alber, right, forward. Somebody approaches me from behind. Now I'm in Nebenhut. And especially if we look at Paulus Hector Meyer's Nebenhut, you know, he's back here, down low, so I'm in Alber, and you approach, I'm ready to attack. I know where I'm from. And this really, for the postures, is the important thing, that we are always comfortable in our position, okay? So Nebenhut is a finicky one. Meyer just describes it, pommel above, long edge down, short edge up nearest. So Nebenhut, okay. Nebenhut, okay. Nebenhut? Well, long edge is down, short edge is towards us, pommel is above. Absolutely could be, right? So all of these can be considered Nebenhut. Now, the crossed hands, on the other hand, puts us in Schrankhut. Here at the school, to make a differentiation though, Schrankhut crossed so that it's on the outside of my body, but now I'm back in Nebenhut. Does Meyer say this is such? No, not exactly, but it's the way we think of it is when the sword is to the inside of the body, we're in Nebenhut. To the outside, we're back in Schrankhut again. And so the cross is that the sword has gone outside of the body for us in this scenario. Again, you know, this is, I think, one of those things that we do that I can't necessarily 100% justify with Meyer, but it helps our students to understand positions a little bit better, and so I'm going to be fully upfront about that. Wechsel is going to be another low position while we're down here. If I come from my Zornhau, I'm going to end in Wechsel in front. Now, we'll be out in front, we're ready to change our direction, either to come back forward, to strike with short edge, to continue around from above. It really doesn't matter which one we're going to do. But out there in front of us now, short edge forward, ready to go. Okay? Nice, comfortable position, relatively easy to get into, although not necessarily one that I'm going to walk out in, although I'm going to be ready to use it, right? Especially I can be a little Fiore-ish here and basically be ready to come out and give an Ausnehmen and then drop it to a thrust, drop it to a strike, whatever the case may be. Einhorn. There's a question that has come up recently, is how high should Einhorn be? You know, are we all the way at the sky? Probably not, for a very simple reason. Breaks the wrist, right? If we keep it in a good structural point, we're going to go point up and forward with no heavy break in the wrist that's going to sap strength from us. But if I cut through, there's my break. Same thing on the other side. Bam, I cut through, there's my break in the wrist, there goes my strength, right? So, hope you're kind of seeing what we're going for here. We want structural stability. Wherever we're going to be at, if we're going to hang out in those positions, we pause for just a second and we look and see, is my wrist broken? Am I structurally stable? Is this something that makes sense? Am I too far back because now I have to move forward, right? If I did this with a heavier sword, would I get pulled off balance? When you're working with your postures, when you're working with your guards, when you're working with your parrying positions in Meyer, don't be pedantic. You don't need to worry that I match the image exactly, right? There's a lot of different images. This is one artist's view of what Meyer was showing him, and it's great artwork, and it's highly realistic, but at the same time, even Meyer notes that there's problems, that there are mistakes that are made in it, you know? Look at the different traditions and ask yourself, does this position make sense? From here, can I do what I'm told to do? Or do I have to work extra hard? Because there may very well be something wrong, especially if minor changes suddenly make it very, very easy to do what you want. So I think at that point, do we have any questions, Alex? Any comments? Nothing? We're good? So guys, we're going to cut this one a little bit short today. It is a Sunday morning. You know, it was a long Saturday night. I got practice starting here in a little bit, so we got to prepare for that. So thank you for coming and watching this video if you're here with us this morning. If you're watching it later, we always appreciate your views. If you can, always like the video, hit that subscribe button. We aren't going to have a video this Thursday because Thanksgiving, and my wife would kill me if I tried to film something on Thanksgiving. Maybe I'll sneak away and just do a happy Thanksgiving, you know, thing that she doesn't need to know about, but it won't be our full show. And then we're off on Sunday as well because of the holidays. We will be back with a abbreviated episode the following Thursday, and then we'll be back to our regular schedule after that. So, as always, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and, you know, we'll see you next time.